Collaborating in woodworking has always sounded iffy to me because I just couldn't make sense of how it would work. How do you decide on design? What if you have different skill levels or different tastes in what looks good? And when I got invited to a fun little woodworking competition called the Festool Buildoff, I was pretty dang nervous about it. In less than 2 days, or about 12 hours, 2 teams of woodworkers have to face off to build a piece that'll be auctioned off to a good cause. Each team for this competition was going to have 6 total members, which is way more people than I'd ever imagined collaborating on a piece with. The woodworkers on my team were Michael Alm from Almfab, Ben Crawford from Red Barn Home Furnishings, Josh Hescott from Hescott Design Co., Raina Tayson from Raina Nicole Woodworks, and Matt Weber from Crossgrain. And all together, in less than 12 hours, we created this. When Dawn and I were reviewing all the footage from the event, I realized that it was basically impossible to describe everything in chronological order because there were so many things happening at the same time. So what I'm gonna do instead, and for the sake of my sanity, I'll break everything down into more manageable parts. First, I'm going to tell you about the build itself and how we put it together. Then I'll go over how I felt about working together with other woodworkers because this was one of the most surprising parts to me. And lastly, I'll go over my own personal Festool Buildoff experience concerning what it was like to be a participant, as well as what I felt, thought, and took away from the event for those of you who actually care. So, let's get into the build! The ND-A1 has been noted several times for its likeness to pieces created by George Nagashima, and truth be told, it wasn't actually something that was intentional, but I'll get back to that later. The bench consists of 5 main parts: the seat, the backrest, the armrest, the spindles, and of course, how it all came together along with the finishing. To make the bench, we picked a slab of silver maple that featured a really cool mountain peak-like shape, and because we liked the form so much, we wanted the entire bench to visibly have that irregular organic look. We cut one straight edge for the front side using the track saw, and for the back facing side, we debarked it using a draw knife, chiseled around the tight spots, and sanded it smooth with a Rotex. Both of the other ends initially had straight cuts, and because we wanted to keep that organic and natural look, we cut these rounded shapes off with a jigsaw and then sanded those down too. With the seat shaped, we drew on the seat where we wanted the backrest, armrest, and legs to be located, and then, using the shaper origin, we first created a jig for each group of holes we were going to bore, and to create the angle we needed, we made angle cuts on the table saw with the backrest jig at 15 degrees and the legs at 10. For the armrest, we actually didn't make a jig, we just freehanded it. We glued the jigs down to a strip of plywood, used them to bore the holes in the actual seat, and then use a 1/4 inch rounder rivet to go around the corners. To make the backrest and armrest, we used the first offcut piece made from the bench and split them into pieces for each, which were both ideas that we didn't plan on. They just spontaneously popped up later in the build process. We debarked them, sanded them, cut them down to size, and made mortises using shaper origin for the backrest and freehand drilled the ones in the armrest. The spindles for the backrest and armrest and legs were all made of cherry in order to give it a nice, warm, and subtle contrast. We squared some pieces away with a planer, used a shaper origin to make all the mortises and tenons, shaped the squared edges using a draw knife and spoke shave, and then sanded them down to smoothen them out. The leg spindles were temporarily attached onto a plywood board in order to make a dado cut with the table saw for wedges. And for the armrest spindles, they had a thinner cut on the tenon made using a reciprocating saw. To put all these pieces together, we first glued the legs and stretchers together, and this was a bit of a struggle because the tenons were so perfectly sized to the mortises. That slight expansion from glue and air pocket made it difficult for the tenons to sit in completely. But we clamped them down as hard as we could and eventually got it flush. Afterwards, we glued the legs to the seat, and for the backrest and armrest, we first glued the spindles to them and then glued each of those parts to the seat too. The backrest in particular had a difficult time going in, so we were really hammering at it to get it in there. It was a little scary at first because so much was breaking off, but luckily it was mostly bark chipping off and only a small part of the wood was damaged. The armrest was way easier. For the finish, we used Rubio Monocoat natural oil, and then voila. There was a point while we were building when Sedge walked over and said, "I like it, very Nakashima vibes." And when I heard that, I looked at it and I think a few of us went, "Ah." It was one of those things where no one really saw it coming because so much of it was designed and made on the fly. But after he made that comment, it kind of stuck. Everyone was calling it a Nakashima style bench and we were okay with it. Great minds think alike, you know? And before I get into my thoughts about team dynamics and collaborations, I wanted to take a second to show y'all what the other team made too. Their official team name was Team B and ours was Team A. But I do want to mention that Team B did rename themselves to be Team A. Their team consisted of Javon Cheney from Cheney Concepts, Logan Newman from Newman Specials Woodworking, Sam Raimondi from DIY Huntress, Tyler Shaheen from Southern Craftsman, Brandon Smith from Cross & Miter, and Drew Witt from Woodworks. And their piece, a 36-inch round coffee table featuring spalted maple, walnut stitching, and a lovely curved walnut base. I am also not gonna go into the build of their coffee table because I don't want to misspeak about something or get one of their steps wrong, so all I gotta say is it was pretty darn dope. In my personal journey of woodworking, I've only had two types of situation in which I've worked with others. Moments where I've received help from my mentors or ones where I'm doing the helping. Team woodworking was so far beyond my scope of imagination that the experience I had not only blew me away, I think it taught me a couple of lessons that I'm pretty sure are valuable for any kind of team. The first of which is a pretty basic concept, and that's that we were all unified towards an idea. We all wanted to make the bench. But I think what I mean by this is the feeling you get when everyone's in on an idea. We didn't have that vibe of someone was half in or not really into it. The kind where someone's just doing the bare minimum every step of the way. And what that did was create this constant motivation and energy. We all helped each other at every step and we bounced around to any part that was needed. If we were gluing something up, someone was there to hold another part down. We had multiple hands on deck at every moment to make every part happen the best way that it possibly could. But that isn't to say that everyone did everything the entire time. Well, at least not in the strict sense. I think we also naturally and unintentionally divided ourselves up into roles, which is the second thing that I think made for a successful collaboration. Without any planning, I felt we split ourselves into the roles of designers, bulldozers, and flex. But at the same time, none of us were stuck to a role. At no point did anyone say something like, "No, that's not my job," or "I don't know how to do that." While each of us took on tasks that may or may not have been strengths of ours, all of us were also flex. Every decision we made was voted on and discussed. Input of all kinds came from every person, and every one of us did every role. Of course, these things didn't just happen immediately. In the very beginning, we were all actually pretty quiet. Ideas and thoughts were thrown out here and there, but I think what was happening was that we were all doing a lot of listening and feeling things out. When we decided on the idea of a bench, it wasn't really something that we decided to do and then started building. We just started drawing the idea on the whiteboard and kept adding ideas after idea until balls started to roll and never stopped. I, for one, have never experienced these things before, and I'll get to that more in my personal notes and feelings about this event, but I do think that these aspects are crucial ingredients to making a good team. Aside from teamwork though, I'll have to say that my overall Festool Buildoff experience was way better than I expected it to be. The way that the event was structured really felt like one of those cooking shows like Chopped. I remember when we started, we were all gathered around in a circle while Sedge told us rules of what was allowed and not allowed. We were told about the time limits, where all the tools were located, where the coffee was, and then we were sent on our ways. I think the only difference between our beginning process compared to what I see on cooking shows is that the chefs all seem to run and start cooking right away versus us. We all kind of quietly moseyed over to our areas and slowly figured out how this was gonna happen. As a participant, I do also want to note that we weren't paid to be at the event and travel was also on us. But food and lodging were taken care of, so we were extremely grateful for that. Additionally, we were able to get a tour of their facility and learned a lot about the company's history, their values, and not only were they talking about their values, we were able to see those values in action, all of which I'll also get back to a little later. All of the proceeds went to the charity called Deeply Ingrained, which is a nonprofit organization that brings woodworking opportunities to underserved youth and individuals. And on the final day, we were able to meet the founder of the organization as well as explore their woodshop on wheels, a mobile woodshop that travels to the youth to hold workshops. The winner of the event wasn't decided by a group of judges or anything, but instead was decided by whichever project was auctioned off with a higher bid. And based on what you see and without looking, I'll let you guess who won in the comments below. Team A? Team B? Now, as for my own personal takeaways, I want to say that this was, by a long shot, the most fun I have ever had woodworking! And I'm completely dead serious about that too. Being able to collaborate with other woodworkers meant the opportunity to see and experience how other people think and work. And additionally, in a weird way, I was able to also see and experience how I myself think and work. When I'm in my own little bubble of a woodshop, I can only think and create from combinations of what I know. Working alongside others not only gave me a chance to gain some new perspectives, it gave me a chance to reflect on my own processes, my areas for improvement, as well as an opportunity to see my approach from a new angle and appreciate it. The fact that I got to witness such a smooth melting pot of skills has convinced me to be open to future collaborations. I won't actively look for one, but I'm not gonna say no if I have the time and energy to do one. And that brings me to another point about teams in general. For me, this was also the first time that I have ever experienced any kind of team environment. I never did sports in school, and everything I'd ever excelled at was basically by myself, like snowboarding, rock climbing, kendo, ceramic, and even woodworking. Because of that, I felt like this was a bigger rush for me than I'd expected. And aside from anything Buildoff related, probably the other best thing in terms of my own personal experience were the chances I got to hang out with everyone. To be honest, on the first night, I was actually gonna stay in my room and just go to sleep. But Don was the one who was like, well, I wanna hang out. And he shot me this look that said, dude, this is once in a lifetime moment, what you doing? And yeah, that convinced me to go, and I'm glad I did too. I consider myself pretty bold with things, but I can't stress how much of an understatement it is to describe how big of an inspiration he's been for me stepping outside of my comfort zone. I mean, I probably would have never even started talking to the camera if it wasn't for him. But anyways, those moments where we got to hang out, meet new people, and talk about random things outside of woodworking were the most priceless moments, and it's actually made me become a lot more conscious about the woodworking community and how much of it I don't know. Going around and interviewing other woodworkers was exciting, but working alongside them and getting to know them is just something else entirely. Last but not least, I've gotta say, being that this entire event was put on by Festool, and that includes the build-off, the charity, the tour of the facility, and the talks of their values, I realized that it's really hard not to love Festool. But besides my personal feelings towards their company and brand, I will always say, just as I've always said before, that you don't need Festool to build good things. But they are good stuff. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was my Festool Buildoff experience. Hello. And welcome to the post-show hangout session. It has been a while, hasn't it? Yes, Don and I took a little break from these videos because after going to Korea and coming back, there was just so much thing happening and so much adjusting going on that making a new videos wasn't happening. For example, we were posting our travel videos to our YouTube channel, Don and Clara, but then that pretty much became impossible for our setup. Making a video and coming up with things to talk about is already a difficult thing for me because I'm generally pretty quiet. So not only does Dawn help me out a lot with that, coming up with things to talk about for 2 channels just wrecked my brain. It's like, oh, I went to a coffee shop. The coffee tasted like coffee. Anyways, we've done a whole lot of adjustments to our workflow, and right now I have been trying to convince him to start his own channel. So if you want to help me convince him, you can check out Dawn's journal on YouTube. As for the future of the channel Dawn and Clara, we're thinking to do some things with it, like, I don't know, live stream experimentations, hangouts, or maybe we'll save that channel to teach people woodworking, but we don't know yet. It's way too early right now. And as we both say a lot, one step at a time. For those of you who have been following along some of my journeys on Shorts or other social media platforms, I am right now working on a bed frame. And we are both working hard on a laser cutting business project, both of which are making steady progress. And last but not least, I want to give a big shout out to all of my Patreon members because y'all are the rock to my channel and a huge inspiration to keeping me going. And as a side note, we do have something interesting in the works for y'all, so stay tuned on the Patreon page. We'll be posting about it soon. I don't know how soon, but soon. After this video, I will be uploading the last interview I did from Korea, which features the amazing Kim Soo-hee from the business alias Rose and Ovang. And after that, we will be going back to build videos for a while. Thank you all so much. I feel really good about making this video and catching up with y'all. Patreon members, can't wait to see y'all in the next live stream event. I hope you all are having an amazing day or night, and peace out. Oh, done recording. I didn't set that. Created by George. And freehand drilled once. Good. Air pocket made it difficult. Air pocket and air pocket. We clamped them down and at blah blah blah. It's pretty darn dope. It was pretty darn dope. It was pretty darn dope. Yeah. Which is the second designer of oh shit. That's not my role. No. Ah shit. The rules. Ah shit. You're really experienced. But foolish. But additionally, we were able to get it. Additionally, stop. Well, as in, if I have the time and energy. If I have the time and energy. Yeah, shit. Alias, fucking allies. Alias. Alias. I'll do that again. Thank you all so much. Can't wait to see y'all in the next live stream.